Yo, 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 what up, what up, what up, what up, what happening? Back with another episode of Crypto Squid Game. Man, start off with a little prayer. Lord, thank you for the day, Lord. Bless and mercy, your grace, and all you do for us. Continue to bless us, mold us, hold us, fold us, direct our path, and guide our steps. Lead us the way you want us to be at. Second, this is not a financial advice channel. I ain't no financial advisor. Don't put no personal information in the comments. And if somebody contact you from this channel, hey, they ain't part of this here because we don't do that there. So don't click on no links, none of that there in the comments. Man, we got another episode of Crypto Squid Games. Let's get into it.
$16 million were stolen from Index Finance. Users were panicking, wondering why the price of an index fund had instantly crashed by 97%. It turns out that a script had mysteriously traded hundreds of times, draining the funds of nearly all their coins. Indexed had just been exploited. At this point, there was nothing the team could do. The damage had already been done. In a follow-up statement, they asked the exploiter to do the right thing by returning the funds and to keep 10% as a bounty. However, only silence followed. Now, this could have been the end of the story. Another cryptocurrency hacker takes off with millions of dollars only to never be seen again. Except, this hacker left behind a trail of clues that would allow us to uncover his true identity. Suddenly, he would not be so quiet. This is the story of a decentralized protocol trying to recover its losses through a centralized system. But it's also the story of an 18-year-old who believes he did nothing wrong. Whoever is right under the court of law could stand to change the entire cryptocurrency industry. Before we get to that, what is indexed? On Ethereum, there are many different tokens you can buy, but what if you want exposure to the entire market? Indexed makes this easy with its index funds, which represent ownership in a diverse portfolio of many tokens. For example, DeFi 5 is an index representing the top 5 DeFi tokens. So you can buy and sell DeFi 5 just like a normal token, and its price will go up or down depending on the prices of its underlying assets. A month before the attack, the developers were contacted by user Umbral Upsilon with questions about specific mechanisms that happened to also be used by the hacker. He claimed he was only building an arbitrage bot. Lawrence happily answered his questions, and Dylan even sent $2,000 to incentivize him to keep working on the project. But after the attack, he changed his username to Bogholder and deleted all his messages. This was a major red flag. In a shocking turn of events, the developers realized they had been helping the hacker this whole time. The next day, someone in the Discord pointed out that Bogholder was a warden at C4, a community code auditing platform. They also showed evidence on the blockchain. C4 paid Bogholder a few $1,000s in prizes from a contest. That wallet then deposited 4 ETH into Tornado Cash hours before the attack. Then, the hacker's wallet withdrew 3 ETH. Tornado Cash is a privacy mixer where anyone can deposit and withdraw ETH anonymously. You usually want to wait before depositing and withdrawing to dissociate the two addresses, but because these deposits and withdrawals were only hours apart, this was definitely suspicious. So, the Index developers quickly got in touch with one of the C4 organizers, but it turns out he already knew about this. Back in August, C4 ran a competition and someone named Tensors won 4th place. In the C4 Discord, you can see that Bogholder was pinged for winning 4th place in announcements. Thus, Bogholder is Tensors. 2 days after the hack, a new user joined the C4 Discord under the username Tensors8. He messaged another one of the C4 organizers asking for the warden rollback because he was joining with a different Discord. He also asked them to change his address on file, probably because he knew his old one was tainted with Tornado Cash. After SockDrawerMoney realized the connection, he messaged Tensors asking if he was involved in the hack and if he intended to return the funds. Tensors denied anything to do with Indexed. By the time Indexed reached out to SockDrawerMoney, Tensors had deleted all his messages from the DM. Fortunately, there was a message logger which lets us still read them. From here, the blockchain provided more paths to search. This wallet only has 6 transactions, 3 of which are receiving ETH from Binance, sending ETH to Coinbase, and sending ETH to another wallet. Upon receiving the ETH, it immediately sent it to the C4 wallet that Tensors own. This discovery was particularly incriminating because it revealed a possible link to a centralized exchange, which requires identity verification. Index reached out to those exchanges in an attempt to uncover the hacker's real-life identity. For now, they published all this information and presented an ultimatum. Tensors, you have 36 hours to return 90% of the stolen funds. If you fail to do this, we will be sending all the information that we have to law enforcement agencies for them to do as they see fit. We will not stop digging either. You've slipped up elsewhere. You can now choose what difficulty you want to play this game on. Easy mode or Dark Souls. It's your call. Later, Indexed was able to uncover the hacker's entire digital footprints. While waiting for a response from the exchanges, Indexed received another tip that Bogholder had registered for C4 using the GitHub account mTheoryLord1. Searching this username on Google revealed another GitHub account, mTheoryLord, which had a single commit in a repository titled Grade 12 Project. This meant the hacker was finishing high school in 2016. Initially, it looked like this commit contained no more information, but the git command line revealed the email address used to submit the project. It includes a domain owned by a high school in Ontario. They also found a Stack exchange with that name. The account mostly posted about math, but 3 months before the attack, he asked a question about executing flash loans on Ethereum. Next, there's a Wikipedia account. His first post was a bit egotistic. After that, he made an edit to a page about a game show for high school students. It edited the alumni section to add a name that matches the previously found email address. Googling the name led to his personal website. The website was down but had been cached by Google about 16 hours before the attack. It stated that he is a master's student at the University of Waterloo studying pure mathematics and he has an interest in cryptocurrency. 20 minutes before the ultimatum deadline, the website was back up with the references to cryptocurrency deleted. It linked to his resume, which contained his birthday. It was at this moment that the team realized they were dealing with an 18-year-old. This took them by surprise and raised some serious ethical concerns. Suddenly, the investigation halted. Andy had taken 10th grade math in elementary school, graduated from high school at 14, and completed his bachelor's in 3 years. When Indexed went live, he had just started working on his master's degree. Andy was truly a genius for his age. He was also a skilled coder, regularly participating in contests to find security flaws in systems. He took an interest in decentralized finance, particularly the mechanisms of automated market makers. He estimated that he spent hundreds of hours playing around with the math behind them, experimenting with the profitability of different strategies. He then wrote bots that would execute arbitrage trades on those platforms, turning a small profit and helping the pools run more efficiently. After discovering Indexed, Andy obsessed over its code and noticed a mispricing opportunity. At first, I didn't believe it, but on paper, it worked. He spent the next month writing a script to exploit the vulnerability. However, as advanced as he was academically, his social maturity lagged. One former classmate described him as being self-confident to the point of arrogance, and openly condescending to students he deemed less intelligent. Whenever he did or said something, he believed it was infallible, the absolute truth. The classmate also says he heard him speak favorably about white supremacy and eugenics. In fact, Andy wasn't so subtle about this. The Ethereum address he used for the hack was custom generated to start with 0x based 1488. He also included a racial slur in his code. These blatant ties to extremist thinking helped Indexed justify doxing Andy despite his age. And if he's smart enough to steal $16 million, he's adult enough to face the legal consequences. Still, this was a difficult decision, and they wanted to give him one last chance. Maybe he should be given a bit more time to consider the true magnitude of the situation. After all, if law enforcement got involved, the consequences on his life could be devastating. In a final attempt to provide him a way out, Dylan messaged Andy on his personal phone number, stating once again that he's been identified and will be reported to law enforcement unless he gives the money back. And his response?
What if there was a way?
At this point, any debates over the ethical implications were over. The team published the final blog post, hired a lawyer, and contacted the police. While the team was busy investigating the case, Andy was busy trolling on Twitter. He wrote a poem and taunted the team for their response. He called what he did arbitrage and claimed that users were simply outtraded. In the end, he said he was looking for the most elite crypto lawyers. While Andy clearly stole money from Indexed, the legal implications are uncertain. This is because Indexed itself was never technically hacked. Indexed is just a set of smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain. Think of it like a global computer where you can program stuff. But these smart contracts aren't so smart, as they execute everything strictly to what the code says. In this case, Andy was not breaking any of the smart contract's rules. He only manipulated them in a way to achieve an outcome nobody expected. I'll make another video explaining exactly how the hack worked, but to summarize,
And that's wild. You got this kid that done broke. You done broke the crypto algorithm some kind of way to figure it out and make it work for your benefit. Man, there's so many ways around this stuff, man. Jesus. Let's finna see what it say.
Andy used $157 million in flash loans to artificially manipulate prices. This tricked the smart contract to think the index fund was 380 times cheaper than it should be. Finally, he bought a ton of these index funds at this price and redeemed them to drain nearly all the underlying tokens. Dylan was aware that this could be a possible pathway for attacks. He spent at least 2 weeks looking into it but couldn't find any errors, nor could 2 security researchers he paid to examine the code. Unfortunately, if you don't find the bug, someone else will, and then you're at their mercy for whatever they decide to do. Andy believes what he did was perfectly legal. It wasn't a hack, but rather a complex series of transactions that exploited the operational logic of the smart contracts. This is the idea of code is law. However, this is a relatively controversial doctrine within the crypto community. Most people on Ethereum will argue that code isn't law, law is law. In that case, Andy would have violated statutes against market manipulation and computer hacking. Whatever he did is definitely unethical. The people that were affected by this were only trying to diversify risk using index funds. Nobody deserves to have their money whisked away. Nearly 2 months after the attack, Index filed a lawsuit. However, they learned they weren't the first to do so. An anonymous company called Cicada137 had already sued Andy. According to the complaint, Cicada represents the largest token holder who lost about $9 million in the attack. Cicada...
They say get in line. But you know, it made perfect sense on the level it was, man. This man, I found out, you know, the weakness and the flaws in the system that manipulated him to his benefit without stretching it to the point to where he was actually breaking the law. So they couldn't necessarily trump him up on criminal charges, so they had to go after him civilly. And see, these are the type of things in the Squid Game that you gotta have to worry about people playing when it comes to different levels of, you know, corruption, even within the system itself. Because maybe the people knew it was a backdoor, and they just know that the general public didn't know it was a backdoor. And he figured it out and found a way to manipulate that. Or maybe they didn't even know it was a flaw in the system, and he was the first one to figure it out, you know.
had already obtained an order freezing the disputed tokens. They also got an order to search his parents' house. But when the search was executed, Andy had already left, taking his computer with him. His parents and younger brother said they didn't know where he was. A week later, Andy appeared at a virtual hearing on Zoom. His camera was off and he barely spoke. The judge ordered him to either transfer the disputed assets to a neutral third party or to appear in court the following week. When the deadline arrived, he hadn't done either. The judge issued a warrant for his arrest. A lawyer for Cicada says there's good reason to believe Andy has fled the country. The case is now incomplete until authorities can locate him. Without him or his tokens, it's impossible to have the case moving. I reached out to Andy using his email, and I didn't expect him to actually reply. He said he could answer my questions. I first asked if he was concerned about being identified and why he didn't take precautions to conceal his identity. When he started contacting Indexed, he did not know about the exploit, so he didn't bother to set up a burner Discord. He also had a very strict window to execute the exploit. This explains why he didn't wait long enough for Tornado Cash. Now that he has been identified, he's thinking of leaving for places with more freedom, although he obviously won't say where. His day-to-day life hasn't really changed too much. Sitting in front of a computer screen in Canada is not that different from sitting in front of a computer screen in the Arctic Circle. I asked him what he plans on doing with the tokens. He says it's nice not having to worry about food and rent and basic things anymore, but really, he thinks that spending money is a waste. Finally, I asked him why he didn't show up to court. His lawyer says he shouldn't respond. For now, those who held certain index funds ended up with huge losses. Since the hack, the platform has never recovered. Dylan admits that nobody really has the same drive to work on the project after all that's happened. Meanwhile, Andy says he's not concerned about getting a job. Waging in the cage is not his idea of a good life. Andy will certainly never have to worry.
Tell the truth. Who idea is it as a have a good life to be working for somebody and busting your tail and getting treated all kind of ways and getting paid the minimum or the minimum to put in work, you know, when you having time away from your family, you rather be on vacation, you rather not have to worry about bills and stuff. So, you know what I mean? Yeah, a lot of people got hurt in this situation, but that's just part of the Squid Games. You know, sometimes you have, just like the Hunger Games, sometimes you have that person that make it out. You know, despite he still got a warrant out for him. You know, I feel bad for the folks that got hit, you know. God bless all them people. I hope they recover their funds or whatever, you know, but yeah, that's just part of, you know, some people got to make it out, you know. And I don't know what to say to this one, but man, God bless y'all, man. And peace, love, and blessings.